And now we're doing 7-33b, and I've already written the equation over down here. I'm just checking it to make sure I got all the negative signs in there. Okay, so it looks like we're good. All right, so looking at this, it's evident that I'm probably going to want to do some fraction busting. But before I do that, I've noticed that I've got a negative 5/3 x and a negative 1/3 x. And these are like terms that I can also combine because they both have the same denominator. So if I add together negative 5 and negative 3, well, negative 5/3 and negative 1/3, I'll get negative 6/3 x. And I still have this 2/5 here. Okay, so that's minus 2/5 plus 1 equals 0. So I've simplified by combining these two. And I've also noticed now that I've got 6/3 that I can divide that. So really, this is 6 divided by 3 is 2. So it's still negative. So that's 2x. And then I've still got this positive 2/5 out there. Plus 1 equals 0. Okay, so now I still have to fraction bust, but it's a lot easier to fraction bust by multiplying by 5 than it would have been to multiply by 15. So let's take this whole thing, multiply it by 5, or 5/1, if we're dealing with fractions. 5 and 5/1 are the same thing, because 5 divided by 1 is equal to 5. All right, so let's multiply this first term here. 5 times 2 is 10, and then that's 1 times 5/5. Okay, then it's 5 times negative 2x, so that's negative 10x. And then it's 5 times 1, which is just 5. And then it's still equal to 0, because 0 times 5 is still equal to 0. Okay, so now I've got 10/5, and I know that that is equal to 2. So that's now a 2 minus 10x plus 5 equals 0. Okay, now we can combine these two terms. We've got a 2 and a 5. So negative 10x plus 7 is equal to 0. Okay, now I can start getting x by itself by putting negative 7. So we'll zero out that 7. So that zeroes out on this side. And all we have left on this side is negative 10x. And on this side, we have negative 7. Okay, so now to get x by itself here, we undo this negative 10 times x by dividing by negative 10. And we'll divide by negative 10 on both sides. So negative 10 over negative 10 is 1. 1 times x is just x. And then over here, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Oops, sorry, you couldn't see that. So a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So this just becomes a positive 7/10. So x is equal to 7/10. Okay, but now we have to check that. So we'll go back up here and I'll start plugging in 7/10 into our original equation. So negative 5/3, and then I'm going to put parentheses to put our 7/10 in there, plus 2/5, that stays the same, minus 1/3, and the x value is 7/10. And then that's plus 1, and it's all equal to 0. Okay, so now let's multiply this stuff. 5 times 7 is 35. 3 times 10 is 30. And we have to remember there was a negative sign, So a negative times a positive is a negative. The whole thing is negative. And then we've got plus 2/5. And then we've got a negative times a positive. So this is going to be a negative. 1 times 7 is 7. 3 times 10 is 30. And then plus 1, and it's equal to 0. Okay, so let's see. What can we combine here? We can combine these like terms. So we've got negative 35 over 30 plus negative 7/30. So 7 plus 35 will be 42. So 42/30, and they're negative. And then that's plus 2/5 plus 1 equals 0. Okay, so in order to resolve this, I better turn these into 30ths. So 5 goes into 36 times. So 6 times 2 is 12. So, and then we've got our negative 42/30 over here, and plus 1 equals 0. All right, so if I combine these two, a negative 42 and a 12, that will be negative 30 over 30. Plus 1 equals 0. Okay, negative 30 over 30 is negative 1 plus 1 equals 0. And negative 1 plus 1, positive 1, is 0. So both sides are equal to each other. So yes, this is the correct solution. X is equal to 7/10.